Bakersfield, California. A city built across open ground. Flat, exposed, engineered. Here, the horizon is broken, not by hills, but by pump jacks, refinery stacks, and long industrial corridors. For more than a century, the earth beneath this valley has been drilled, pumped, refined, and burned. Daylight reveals the machinery. At night, the flame remains. Work continues after dark. Lights stay on. Systems do not sleep. In a landscape defined by extraction, not everything brought to the surface was meant to be disturbed. Tonight, we examine locations where the oil still burns and where something else never fully went out. These are 8 haunted locations of Bakersfield. The discovery of oil in Kern County transformed Bakersfield from agricultural outpost into industrial engine. By the early 20th century, the Midway-Sunset Oil Field had become one of the largest in the nation. Production intensified. By the 1920s, advancing drilling methods and concentrated field development reshaped the land. Derricks covered the hills. Pipelines stretched for miles. Refineries processed crude day and night. Extraction became a structural force in the region. It remains a central pillar of California's economy, still dependent on those early productive fields. Extraction did not pause for weather or season or comfort. It continued regardless. Oil work was dangerous. Blowouts ignited without warning. Gas accumulated in confined spaces. Machinery crushed hands, arms, torsos. Fires spread quickly across wooden derricks. Some workers died instantly. Others suffered burns that scarred them for years. Accidents were recorded briefly. Production resumed. The ground was expected to yield. The workforce was expected to return. Workers and visitors describe unease near older wells. The sound of metallic impact where no machinery is active. Footsteps crunching across gravel pads after shifts have ended, moving between idle pump jacks and silent derricks. A silhouette near flare stacks, visible only in peripheral vision, distorted by heat shimmer and the restless burn of excess gas. Some report seeing a figure near a pump jack, standing still in the dark, vanishing when headlights approach. The oil fields built Bakersfield. They reshaped its skyline and fueled its economy. Flames rise against the night sky as they always have. Extraction continues. But beneath the wells, the burn pits, and the scorched ground, not every disturbance returned to rest. rail lines reached Bakersfield in the 1870s. By the early 20th century, Southern Pacific had established extensive yards across the city. Freight trains carried oil, agricultural shipments, and passengers moving west in search of work. Bakersfield became a transfer point, a holding place, a threshold between departure and arrival. Railroad labor was physical and unforgiving. Coupling cars required standing between moving steel. Brake failures sent cars rolling uncontrolled. Workers slipped from ladders, misjudged timing, or lost footing on ballast rock. Some were crushed instantly. Others survived long enough to be carried from the yard without ceremony. During the 1930s, Dust Bowl migrants arrived by rail, many stepping off trains with no property beyond what they carried. Temporary camps formed near the tracks. Heat, scarcity, and unstable employment followed. Not all who arrived remained standing. Late-night workers describe hearing train whistles when no trains are scheduled, the sound carrying briefly across otherwise silent yards. Footsteps moving along gravel beds, measured and steady, as if someone is walking the line between parked cars. Some report the sense of someone watching from inside empty boxcars, as though movement shifts just beyond the open doorways. A lone figure standing between idle rail cars, motionless in low light, gone when approached or illuminated directly. Railroads delivered labor. They delivered fuel. They delivered hope. They also delivered loss. The tracks remain, cutting through the city. Steel that carried thousands westward. Some journeys stopped here. Recorded in ledgers, cleared from the yard. Work resumed. The Padre Hotel opened on April 12, 1928. It was born in a period of economic optimism fueled by oil production and rail commerce. Rising 8 stories above downtown, it was built in Spanish Revival style. One of the tallest and most prominent structures in the city. It signaled confidence. A permanent skyline in a place built on extraction. Traveling executives, oil investors, and business operators filled its rooms. The hotel was meant to reflect stability in a city still defining itself. The Great Depression followed soon after. Oil prices fluctuated. Businesses contracted. Employment thinned. Rooms once reserved for industry leaders sat vacant. In the 1950s, tragedy struck inside the building. A fire on the 7th floor claimed multiple lives, including children. In 1952, a powerful earthquake devastated Kern County. Structural damage spread across Bakersfield. Several individuals reportedly died within the hotel during the disaster. Over time, decline replaced optimism. Ownership disputes emerged. Code violations mounted. Upper floors were condemned. For years, the hotel stood partially vacant. A building constructed to project permanence entered prolonged silence. After renovation and reopening, staff and guests began describing disturbances. A child's handprint appears on a cafe pillar, returning even after repeated cleaning. Sinks turn on and off in empty restrooms. Bathroom locks rattle when no one stands inside. Footsteps are heard in upper hallways after floors have been cleared. Some report a tall man in a long coat seen briefly in corridors, vanishing when approached. Employees have also described the presence of a young girl in the hotel lobby. She is said to move quietly near the front desk. On several occasions, staff have reported the sensation of fabric being pulled, a tug at a shirt sleeve or apron string, with no one visible nearby. The Padre Hotel stands restored. Lit up, occupied, open for business. But fire reached its upper floors. The earthquake shook its foundation. People died within its walls. The building endured, though some rooms do not feel entirely vacated. The Fox Theater opened on December 24, 1930, during the early years of the Great Depression. Designed in Spanish colonial revival style, its facade was ornate, deliberate, meant to project glamour during uncertainty. It seated more than 1,000 people. A place for films, stage productions, and public gathering. For a city defined by oil and rail commerce, the theater offered controlled escape. Light, sound, narrative. The timing was unforgiving. By 1930, economic strain had already tightened across the country. Unemployment rose, oil prices fluctuated, families reduced spending. Entertainment became conditional. Employees worked long hours for modest wages. Projection booths were hot. Mechanical equipment required constant monitoring. Carbon arc lamps produced intense heat and fumes. Operators stood for extended shifts in enclosed spaces with limited ventilation. Maintenance staff climbed narrow stairwells to service lighting and rigging. Accidents were not uncommon in early theaters. Falls from ladders, electrical burns, equipment malfunction. Closures and financial instability followed in later decades. Ownership changed. Programming shifted. Downtown traffic declined. The building endured periods of uncertainty when silence replaced applause. After restoration, staff and visitors began describing disturbances. Footsteps have been heard crossing the empty stage after closing. A dark figure has been observed moving across the far end of the lobby, disappearing before it can be approached. Near the entrance, a man resembling a panhandler has been seen standing by the doors, vanishing when someone moves toward him. Some describe a young girl in old-fashioned clothing appearing briefly in the lobby. She is seen standing still as if waiting. When attention returns, she is no longer there. The Fox Theater was built to gather a crowd, to fill seats, to amplify voices. Its walls absorbed decades of sound. Applause, laughter, music, and long stretches of silence. The curtains still rise. The house still fills. But when the doors lock and the lights dim, the building does not always feel empty. Highway 99, known as the Golden State Highway, became a primary north-south corridor through the Central Valley in the early and mid-20th century. Before Interstate 5 diverted traffic westward, Bakersfield's stretch of 99 carried truck drivers, oil workers, seasonal laborers, and families relocating for work. Motels lined the roadway. Low-rise buildings, exterior corridors, neon signage visible from asphalt. Rooms rented by the night, or by the week. Designed for turnover, not permanence. Anonymity followed traffic. Temporary lodging meant limited oversight. Arguments escalated behind thin walls. Assaults occurred without witnesses. Overdoses ended quietly in rented rooms. Some deaths were recorded briefly. A name, a date, a line in a local report. Others received little attention. Seasonal laborers moved through quickly. Drivers stayed a single night. Some checked in alone and were discovered the next day when housekeeping unlocked the door. Heat settled into asphalt parking lots. Police lights reflected against faded siding. The room was cleared. The vacancy sign relit. Operations continued. Current guests and former staff describe a persistent unease in certain older properties. Televisions turning on in rooms just vacated. The sound of movement in adjacent units confirmed to be empty. Doors found ajar after being secured. Some report the feeling of being watched from the parking lot when no one stands nearby. Figures glimpsed through curtains, present at a distance, gone when someone steps closer. The accounts are not dramatic. They are brief, localized, difficult to document. Highway motels were built for passage, for rest between destinations. They were never meant to hold history. But anonymity does not erase consequence. Rooms changed occupants nightly. Some stories ended there. The vacancy sign flickered. The door locked. Traffic moved on. Union Cemetery was established in 1872, before large-scale oil extraction reshaped Kern County. It predates most of modern Bakersfield. It started as a burial ground for Colonel Thomas Baker, a prosperous lawyer, politician, and businessman who established Bakersfield in 1863. Early settlers were buried there. Farm laborers, railroad workers, oil field employees. As the city expanded, the cemetery remained. Streets formed around it. Industry rose nearby. Traffic increased. The dead did not move. Life in early Kern County was physically demanding. Heat was constant, medical care limited, industrial safety inconsistent. Rail accidents, oil field fires, machinery failures. Children died from illness that would later become preventable. Influenza outbreaks moved quickly through crowded housing. Infant mortality was common. Work-related fatalities were recorded briefly. Plots filled in clusters. Families returned repeatedly to the same ground. Rows expanded during epidemic years, expanded again during industrial growth. Loss accumulated. Visitors describe unease in the older sections near the original plots. Cold pockets at dusk, even during warm evenings. Others describe the sensation of being watched near the unmarked graves in the older portion of the cemetery, as if something remains aware of the living. Some report seeing a woman holding a baby, standing near one of the older markers, visible only briefly before disappearing. The reports are quiet, but consistent among those who visit after sunset. Cemeteries do not conceal history. They catalog it. Names carved in stone, dates aligned in rows. The city expanded outward. Oil burned, trains passed, motels filled and emptied. Union Cemetery remained. Nothing here moves again. The Kern County Museum was established in 1941 as an effort to preserve the region's early history. Over time, historic buildings were relocated to the museum grounds. Homes, rail structures, oil derricks, commercial storefronts. Structures that once stood on working land were moved, reconstructed, and arranged in a curated village. History assembled in one place, removed from its original foundation. Many of these buildings witnessed hardship before they were moved. Oil workers lived in small company houses near extraction sites where shifts were long and accidents frequent. Rail employees rented rooms close to shifting yards, returning at night covered in dust and soot. Families endured economic collapse, industrial injury, and seasonal instability within these walls. Illness spread in close quarters, arguments carried through thin partitions. Loss was not uncommon. When neighborhoods declined or development reshaped downtown, the structures were dismantled and transported elsewhere. But relocation does not erase trauma. What occurred inside those rooms remained part of the structure long before it was placed on curated ground. Several of the relocated structures have generated reports of unusual activity. At Fellows Hotel, staff describe a presence lingering in the upstairs rooms and near the former kitchen area after closing. Inside the Wild Mansion, some report seeing a young woman near the upper rooms, appearing briefly before disappearing from view. The sighting is often connected to a woman said to have died in the home decades ago. In the Howell house, a little girl has been reported in an upper window, visible only for a moment before vanishing. Some believe that presence followed when the structures were moved. The reports are quiet, contained, often dismissed, but repeated enough to remain part of the museum's history. The museum preserves architecture. It preserves artifacts. It preserves arrangement. Buildings that once stood on ground shaped by labor now rest on curated soil. What they once contained was not measured in lumber, but in trauma. Some structures feel as though they did not arrive alone. History can be relocated, but not undone. The Kern River cuts through the eastern edge of Bakersfield, flowing down from the Sierra Nevada before reaching the valley floor. It has long served as a source of irrigation and recreation. But the river is unpredictable. Snowmelt increases its volume rapidly. Release schedules from upstream dams shift without warning. In December 1952, heavy rainfall and runoff caused significant flooding across Kern County. Bridges were damaged, roads submerged, homes destroyed, lives affected forever. The river does not adjust to expansion. The city adjusted around the river. Drownings have occurred repeatedly along the river. Visitors underestimate the current. Waders lose footing on submerged rock. Children enter shallow edges where the depth changes suddenly. Rescue operations are frequent during peak seasons. Warning signs line the banks. Some are ignored. Some are not seen. Not every person who enters the water returns. Recovery efforts sometimes extend for days, sometimes longer. The river continues moving regardless. Visitors describe unease near quieter stretches of shoreline at dusk. Voices heard briefly over the sound of moving water when no one stands nearby. Strange figures seen near the bank that disappear when approached, often dismissed as shadow and distance. Some report the sensation of being watched from the opposite side of the river when no one is present. The experiences are brief, difficult to confirm, but repeated by those who return after sunset. Oil burns above ground. Water moves below. The river does not announce danger. It does not record who it carries. It simply continues. And not everyone who entered returned. Some were found downstream. Some were not. Bakersfield was built on extraction. Oil pulled from earth. Labor pulled from bodies. Movement pulled from rail lines. Industry reshaped the valley. Flames rise at night. Pump jacks continue their motion. The systems endure. But beneath the surface, the ground holds more than fuel. It holds memory. In Bakersfield, the oil still burns, and some disturbances never fully cooled. Have you experienced anything paranormal in Bakersfield? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe for more haunted content. And until next time, have a good night.